One of the biggest challenges we see on Football Manager 26 is your players not pressing the opposition's backline even though you're playing with a high press. What may be the problem here is that you're not applying opposition instructions correctly. The second reason could be that the game mechanics may not be very good this year and your players may be very reluctant to engage the opposition's backline. But let's just focus on the first reason, which is being that you may not be applying your opposition instructions correctly. Over time, playing FM26, I've been able to actually force the opponents into making mistakes or into making rash decisions and playing loose passes that help us recover possession of the ball and go on to create a very quality chance or even score a goal. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I go about applying the position instructions in a way that is going to enable your team force the press and force the opposition into making mistakes. So before we dive into the opposition instructions screen, I want to show you something really important in the tactics screen that is going to affect the way your team presses. Now, if this is what I have here in a bi-mini setup, I have a basic 4-2-3-1 really. And if you look at the way our team is set up out of possession, this is the kind of players that I have. We have a tracking center forward on a tracking winger, or tracking winger is only one outlet. If I go over to a team instructions and then you look at the way the team is set up out of possession, if you go ahead and click on the high press phase, this is what we have. So this is a very huge problem when you're going about pressing. I have a tracking forward, a tracking winger on both sides, and then we have wide defensive midfielders. This setup that we have here is not very helpful if you want to go about playing a high press and pressing the opposition. The reason why that is, if you look at the team shape and you look at the way we're set up out of possession, we're going to start with the tracking center forward. If you go back to the tracking center forward, as a tracker, the center forward is instructed to track back defensively as the opponent starts to advance and try to create more chances. So they're going to drop off a lot. So having a tracking center forward as a center forward or even as wingers may not really help you. But look at what happens when you go ahead and set him to a normal center forward. The normal center forward is going to set the tone for the team's defensive strategy, often starting the press. So in case you do not have you have a tracking center forward on one side, you need to just enable the center forward, the normal center forward. He's much better at pressing than the tracking center forward. Now for the wide midfielders, it's not very glaring when you're using a tracking wide midfielder or just a normal tracking midfielder. But if you look at the normal track, or the tracker is going to drop off a lot. But if you're using the normal wide midfielder, to be honest, this player is going to protect the wide areas and just try to stop the opposition in the wide areas, and they're also going to be ready for counter attacks. So I just think leaving them on normal roles, you can have maybe one tracker, but you don't need to have a lot of trackers on your team. So let's get into the team instructions. And the other thing you want to have in the team instructions, obviously, you're going to want to have a high press. And I recommend having a much more often trigger press if you actually want to force the press as often as you can. So with that being said, let's go over to the opposition instructions screen. So that is over here at the top. We can just go over to opposition instructions. And now we can see that the team that we're playing against is Eintracht Frankfurt. They are playing in a back three. So us having a front four, that's essentially a front four, is actually going to be quite helpful for us in the press. Now the opposition instruction screen is divided into 4 parts. You have a type marking, you have the trigger press, tackling, and the show on to weaker foot. The main thing you want to focus on when you're trying to force your opposition into making mistakes is the trigger press option. So because they're playing with a back three, they're going to be slightly more difficult to press against. But if you look at their individual players, let's say from their center back here in Vuskovic, you can see that his bravery is quite good. His composure is quite okay, I guess, or average for like the Bundesliga. But he's a sort of player that in case you go ahead and press him, you may not win possession back. If you go back to Malik Theo, on the other hand, Theo is a lot better, and you can see that his bravery is not very good, but his composure, okay, his composure is pretty much the same anyway. But his acceleration is not the quickest. But if you look at the other player in Kouliakis, bravery 16, composure 13, his concentration is 15. Pressing this guy is not going to help you get possession back. Going through all the center backs, we've seen that they have very good center backs anyway, people that can actually hold on to possession of the ball. But the weak link here in their team is Malik Theo. That's because he's a player that has acceleration only 12. His composure is average and his bravery is not very good as well. So in case you want to trigger press somebody, Malik Theo is the one player that I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and put a trigger press on him always. That way, when they go ahead and play the ball to Malik Theo, your team is going to go ahead and trigger the press and start engaging the opposition. Get on. Now, Malik Theo is the central defender. I don't know how often they're going to have to play the ball to him. But if you go ahead and watch the matches and then you see that they don't play the ball to Malik Theo, you need to find a way to maybe mark somebody else in the game. That is where type marking actually comes in. You can put the other 2 very good center backs on type marking. Go ahead and turn on type marking. This way your strikers or your wide players are going to be the ones to put some marking on these guys, forcing the AI to play the ball to Malik Theo, which can then allow you to start triggering the press. When it comes to tackling, you want to put hard tackling on the player that has the lowest amount of bravery. That is Malik Theo in this case. Malik Theo's bravery is between 11 and 13. So if you go ahead and put hard tackling on him, it can force your players to actually engage him a lot more. But remember that you're using strikers in this sense. So your strikers may not be the very best tacklers. So I do recommend that you just use the normal tackling for Malik Theo. This is you trying to force the press, trying to force a mistake head on. Now, we're not really going to look at anybody beyond the wing backs and the defensive midfielders and the attackers. This is just basically the defenders and how you can force your team to press the opposition defenders and get the ball back from them very early. So if you found this video useful, do let me know in the comment section. And if you have any other questions about opposition instructions or how to basically force the opposition to lose possession of the ball, do let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.